Let's talk about Ghazala Din, a woman who, seemingly out of nowhere, built this incredible property empire on nothing but promises, and then, just as quickly, vanished, leaving behind a wake of financial devastation. So how on earth did she pull it off?
And that was the promise. That was the hook. It was the core message she used to mesmerize investors and build this multi-million-pound illusion. You hear that, right? It's that perfect mix of urgency and opportunity, a classic recipe for anyone looking for that one golden ticket. But promises are easy. How did she make it feel so real?
Well, to understand the how, you first have to understand the where. Her stage was Birmingham, a city that was hungry for its next big chapter. You had these gleaming new towers popping up next to old industrial canals. The whole city was just desperate to prove it was a hub of modern opportunity. And that created the perfect backdrop for an illusionist to, well, conjure fortunes out of that collective ambition.
Now you might be thinking Ghazala Din started with a ton of money or some fancy education. But nope, her beginnings were humble, and that fueled this deep hunger for more. Her real assets weren't in a bank account. They were personal. She just had this incredible, uncanny ability to persuade people, to make you trust her instantly, to make you feel like she was letting you in on a huge secret.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of it. How exactly do you turn charisma into a tangible, cash-generating empire? Her method was basically a carefully constructed performance, built on a foundation of, well, pure fiction.
Her process was a masterclass in deception, really. First, she'd create these glossy, beautiful brochures for apartments that just didn't exist. She'd use pictures from magazines. Then, she would literally point to random construction sites around the city and claim them as her exclusive developments. And get this, she even hired actors to pose as her business partners in meetings, just to add that extra layer of legitimacy. It was all about creating a physical reality for a financial fantasy.
But look, fake brochures alone don't build an empire. It was the story that tied the whole thing together. This one simple line, "Birmingham is the next London," that became her mantra. It tapped right into local pride and, more importantly, a powerful fear of missing out. She wasn't just selling property, she was selling a narrative of inevitable wealth, and she was the only one who had the key.
And who bought into this dream? You know, this is the really heartbreaking part. It wasn't just the super wealthy or the greedy. It was doctors looking for a little passive income. It was taxi drivers trying to build a better future for their families. It was retired couples hoping to make their pensions stretch a little further. They weren't just investing in property. They were investing in the hope that she was manufacturing.
All right, so any good illusion needs an audience, and a growing audience needs what looks like proof. Ghazala Din knew exactly how to manufacture that proof, creating this myth around herself that she had this untouchable, golden success. At its heart, what she was running was a classic Ponzi scheme. It's basically a financial house of cards that needs a constant flow of new money to stay standing. See, the new investors aren't getting paid from profits because there are no profits. They're getting paid with the cash that comes in from the next wave of investors.
The math behind it was brutally simple. She would take in huge sums from her new clients. Then she'd skim a small fraction off the top, maybe 15%, and pay it out to her earliest investors as their returns. And of course, they were thrilled. They thought they were making a killing, so they became her most powerful marketing tool, going out and telling everyone about this financial genius they'd found.
And that was the result. This strategy created an incredibly powerful reputation. Suddenly, she wasn't just a developer. She was seen as some kind of investment visionary, someone who could turn anything she touched into gold. This Midas touch myth made her seem infallible, which, of course, just drew in more and more and more people.
But here's the thing about an empire built on smoke. It can't last forever. The bigger it gets, the more fresh cash it needs just to survive. And inevitably, the juggler starts to drop the balls, and hard-working people start asking questions that you just can't answer with a smile.
It all started with people like Tariq, one of her first clients. He didn't just want to see a number on a statement, he wanted to see his investment. He wanted to go stand on the very ground where his apartment was being built. It was a simple, totally logical request. And for Ghazala, it must have been terrifying.
And then came others, like Evelyn, who started asking for the legal documents she was promised, proof of ownership, title deeds, all the boring, tangible stuff that separates a real investment from a total fantasy. These questions were direct challenges to the very foundation of her illusion.
So what did Ghazala do? She stalled.
She distracted, she made new promises, she dodged phone calls, but the pressure was relentless. Every single question was another crack in the facade. This dazzling golden empire she had built was completely hollow, and it was starting to collapse in on itself.
She had to have known the game was up. I mean, there were just too many questions, too many promises to keep, and the well of new investors had to be running dry. So with the walls closing in, she prepared for one final, dramatic performance.
Picture this. One rainy Birmingham night, she executes her exit plan with cold, calculated precision. While her phone is buzzing non-stop with angry and anxious messages from investors, she quietly packs her bags. Systematically, she drains her accounts of every last penny. And by morning, she was simply gone.
And for the hundreds of people who had trusted her with their life savings, their futures, there was no explanation, no apology, just silence. The woman who had promised them a better tomorrow had stolen it instead, vanishing without a single trace.
You know, in the end, Ghazala Din wasn't just a con artist. She was a masterful storyteller. She sold a vision that was so compelling it felt absolutely real. And her story leaves us with this timeless and pretty critical question. When someone presents you with a future that seems too good to be true, how do you spot the difference between a genuine vision and a carefully crafted illusion?